Hello students, in this video I'll be explaining to you the exercises of chapter 7, that is King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. We'll first start with the meanings. The first one, wisdom, the ability to make good decisions. As I told you earlier, a person who has wisdom is known as a wise person. And the meaning of ability means kabiliyat, a person who can take or make good decisions. Decisions means to decide something. Next one, fertile, land that can produce good crops. Produce means to grow good crops. Craftsmen, people who make objects with their hands. And I had told you in the earlier video that craftsman does not mean people who make things using machines. For example, a potter. A potter makes pots, so we will call a potter as a craftsman. Palanquin, as I told you, that in Hindi it means palki, a chair with box-like enclosure. Now what do you mean by the word enclosure? First of all, let us break this word C-L-O-S. Let us consider this word as close. Something that is closed. For example, most of you also have beds at home wherein you can store things inside. I hope you understood what I'm trying to say. You do sleep on that bed, but under that, or you can say inside the bed, you can store things, which is also a kind of box-like enclosure. Enclosure means when you cover something from usually four sides, or there may be some other sides also. Whenever it is closed from all sides, those things are known as enclosures. Next one, pay homage and tribute, as I'd explained to you, to show respect. Impressed, admired and respected someone. Most of you already know what the word impress means. Now what do you mean by the word admire? When somebody does something good and you just look at that person and you feel happy. For example, if a small child does some very good work, you are impressed with the child and you admire that child. You look at that child, you feel happy, you want to say something good to that child, and you also respect that child. So that is an example of what impressed means. And in this story, who was impressed by whom? The Queen of Sheba was impressed by the wisdom of King Solomon. The next one, attendant, a person whose job is to look after someone. Look after means किसी का देखभाल करना. And attendants may be of various types. As I told you, we have in our school peons who do work for the teachers, for the principal, even for the students. So they are known as attendants. We have attendants in almost all the places. If you take example of a hospital, we have nurses. They are also known as attendants. Moving on to the question answers. What was loaded on the camels that the Queen of Sheba brought for the king? The meaning of loaded means whenever we put something together. And in the olden days, you know that they used to use camels and horses. So what was kept on the camels that the queen brought for the king? The camels were loaded with treasures, means khazane, from Queen Sheba's land. Now let us revise. Queen Sheba's land. The name of that land is Yemen. You can see it is given over here. And let us revise the other thing as well. I had told you that Yemen was also known as Saba. Now students, what I mean to say from this is, you can take example of this one place, Pondicherry. which is also known as Puducherry. And you also know about the place called Bangalore, which is now known as Bengaluru. So in the olden days also we had these kinds of changes with the names. For example, Yemen itself. In the olden days it was called Saba, and now we call that place as Yemen. Name the place from where the Queen of Sheba came. The same answer. The place from where the Queen of Sheba came was known as Yemen. How did the people of her land become rich? The people of her land became rich by selling their goods all over the world. All over the world means everywhere in the world, in all the countries, in all the continents. Why did the Queen of Sheba visit King Solomon? The Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon to pay homage and tribute to him, which means that she had come to show respect. She had a desire means ichha, to meet him because he was known for his great wisdom. Now, students, in the modern times, if somebody tells you that a hero or an actor or some singer or some dancer is coming to visit your town, you will have a desire to meet them or just to see them. In the same way, in those days, King Solomon was very, very well known for his wisdom. And so, this Queen of Sheba had a desire to meet him only because she had heard of his great wisdom. And the last one, how did the queen test the king's wisdom? Over here, test does not mean a written test. It means that she did something to know the king's wisdom. And how did she do that? We have the answer. The queen brought two identical pots of flowers. Identical means the two pots of flowers looked almost the same. One was real and the other was artificial. The queen asked the king to differentiate between the two. Differentiate means to find out what is the difference between the two pots of flowers. The king wisely did so. Did so means he did differentiate between the two. This is how the queen tested the king's wisdom. And in this answer, we do not have what the king did. So, only with this much sentence, we know that the king asked that the two pots of flowers should be taken out in the garden. And what happened over there was honeybees or any other insects. As you can see here in the background, I have a picture. The insects or the bees started to crowd towards the real ones. So that is how the king's wisdom was known. Let us now move on to the next PDF. True or false? King Solomon was sleeping when the messenger came. This sentence directly tells you that something is wrong, because a king will never sleep when a messenger comes. So it is false. The Queen of Sheba was not welcomed properly. False, because King Solomon already knew about the Queen of Sheba and that she had come to visit him. The queen was impressed by King Solomon. True, because she got to see his wisdom. The two pots had identical flowers. Yes, it is true, because we could not know the exact difference between the two pots. The king was able to differentiate between the real and artificial flowers. Yes, it is true. He did so by asking the two pots to be taken out in the garden. Moving on to this exercise. Choose the words from the box to complete the following similes. Now, what do you mean by similes? Students, let me explain to you. Let us see the first one. As blind as a bat. This bat does not mean cricket bat. This is an animal, or you can also say a mammal, the bird that hangs inverted or upside down on a tree. And in the olden days, what used to happen is people used to believe that bats are blind, which means they cannot see. But the truth is, bats can see well during the night time. And you might have observed that during the daytime, bats will not fly around. They will mostly remain on the trees. And the reason for that is they cannot see properly during the daytime. They can see very well in the night. And so in the olden days, if somebody would not be able to see properly, they would use this simile, that is, as blind as a bat. And students, you should also take note of one thing. Sometimes similes, when you read them, you may feel that they are false. But that is the objective, or that is why similes are used. Because sometimes the sentence itself or the phrase itself may seem something wrong. Next one, as gentle as a lamb. Lamb means it is the small one or the young one of a sheep. And you may be knowing how goats and sheep behave when the shepherd takes them anywhere. Shepherd means the person who takes care of them. Even if they are taken to remove the wool from their body, they will never do any kinds of movements. They will remain in a gentle manner. So if we say that somebody is gentle, we can also say that that person is as gentle as a lamb. As light as a feather. This is very easy to understand. Feather means punk. And any feather is usually light. Light means halka, the opposite of heavy. As wise as an owl. Now students, people do not exactly know an owl is wise or not. As we had studied in this chapter, we know about the wisdom of human beings very well. But as for owls, we do not exactly know. And if you remember, we had the chapter Toothy's Christmas Party. Over there also Toothy the owl was considered as the wisest person or the wisest bird over there. Next one, as cool as a cucumber. Students, let me correct one thing. Some of you usually call this as cucumber. That is a wrong pronunciation. It is pronounced as cucumber. As cool as. Whenever you eat a cucumber, it is always cool. You will never find a cucumber a little warm or little hot. Next one, as sweet as honey. Very easy to understand. As busy as a bee. Why do we use the word busy? Always doing some work. Because whenever we talk about a bee, you will always find them making honey. And they move from place to place, taking nectar from flowers. And therefore we use this simile, as busy as a bee. And the last one, as proud as a peacock. The meaning of the word proud in Hindi, as we say, hoshyari dikhana. Now you may think, is peacock a proud bird? And the answer to that is no. As I had told you in this one, as blind as a bat. A bat is not actually blind. In the same way, a peacock is not actually proud. But why do we use this word as a kind of opposite sentence or opposite phrase? Because you must have noticed when a peacock spreads its feathers, it looks very beautiful. Now, if a human being does the same thing, you will obviously say that the person is proud, trying to show off. और in Hindi we can say दिखावा करने की कोशिश कर रहा है. So from these things what we get to know is all these phrases can also be used for human beings. As I told you in the first one, if a person cannot see properly, you call that person as blind as a bat. And for example, the fifth one, if a person usually remains cool, which means that person does not get angry easily, you say that that person is as cool as a cucumber. Moving on to the next exercise. Read the following words and write them in the correct columns. Now what this exercise means, let me explain. D sound, T sound. What do these two things mean? Whenever you pronounce any word, especially these words that are mentioned here, you can see at the end we have one common letter, that is D. But there is one difference in many of the words, that is when you pronounce these words, in some words the letter D sounds like T, or you can also say D sounds like T. Let's read the words so you'll understand in a better way. Allowed. Please listen to me carefully when I pronounce the words. Allowed. You can hear the D sound at the end. Enjoyed. Cleaned. Raised. Imagined. Cried. And now I'll pronounce the words in this column. Talked. Walked. Mopped. Promised. Now many of you students usually pronounce these words with a D sound or D sound. So I hope you won't do that mistake again. This is not pronounced as talked. It is pronounced as talked. And I'll give you the reason why we do that. Because take for example the sound of K. When you speak, you cannot pronounce K and D together. You may try to say these words as I also say, talked. You can see it sounds a little awkward, a little odd. So these kinds of words are pronounced with a T sound or T sound. Talked. Same way for this, you cannot pronounce this as walked. You have to pronounce it as walked. Same way, mopped, promised. Here also you cannot say promised because S and D sound do not go together in a proper way. And now going back to these words, allowed. Here we don't have W or A sound, it is just allowed. Same way, enjoyed, cleaned, raised, imagined, cried. So I hope you understood what D and T sound mean. Moving on to the next exercise. Fill in the blanks with but, if, or. Before moving on to these sentences, let us see what these words mean. But means लेकिन, if means अगर, or means या तो. I hope you understood these words. You can also translate them into your own language. The meaning is going to be the same. The first one, he is poor but is honest. वो गरीब है लेकिन ईमानदार है. Now try to use the word if in this sentence. He is poor if is honest. And if you translate that sentence into Hindi, it becomes वो गरीब है अगर वो ईमानदार है. The sentence does not make any sense. Same way, if you put or, it is not going to make any sense. So the best word that can be put over here is but. वो गरीब है लेकिन ईमानदार है. Now making sense means what? If you take this example in real life, practically, a person who is poor, you may have known about stories where people are poor, they do not have money, they are not able to eat, and so what they do is they try to steal money or steal things from other people. So this sentence makes sense when you use the word but. Next one. My father is at home, but my mother has gone out. In the same way, if you put if over here, it will make no sense. If you put or over here, it will make no sense. Next one. You must study hard or you will not get good marks. I'll explain to you this sentence. तुम्हें मेहनत करनी होगी. और यू कैन ऑल्सो से तुम्हें पढ़ाई में मेहनत करनी होगी, नहीं तो तुम्हें अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं मिलेंगे. सो नाउ इट मेक्स कंप्लीट सेंस. और मीन्स अगर तुमने ये नहीं किया तो ऐसा हो सकता है. नेक्स्ट वन. आई विल गो इफ़ यू कम विथ मी. मैं जाऊंगा अगर तुम मेरे साथ आओगे. Next one. I knocked on the door but no one answered. मैंने दरवाजे पर खटखटाया लेकिन किसी ने जवाब नहीं दिया. Next one. We will go for a picnic if it does not rain. हम पिकनिक के लिए जाएंगे अगर बरसात नहीं हुई. So I hope you understood the uses of but, if and or. Moving on to the next exercise. Choose the correct prepositions from the box and fill in the blanks. First of all, I need to tell you what you mean by preposition. Let us break this word. Position. Position means place. Not only place but even time. Now, what I mean to say over here is, whenever you talk about any subject means the person or the thing that we are talking about in a sentence, and you are trying to mention the position or time. If you take any sentence of English, I went to school by bus, which means that you are going to the school using a bus. Or if you also say that I was standing beside him, उसके बाजू में. To the right, to the left, front, behind, above, beneath, with, from, all these words are known as prepositions, which simply means giving the position of the noun. First one. School finishes at 3:30 p.m. Whenever you are talking about time, it will always be the preposition at. I usually come home by bus. I is the subject and the position of the subject, that is I, with relation to the bus is shown by the preposition by. After I have my milk, I sit down on the sofa. Whenever you sit down anywhere, you will use the preposition on. Now you cannot say that I sat down under the sofa. It will mean that मैं सोफे के नीचे बैठा हूँ. So that is going to be a wrong preposition. I sit down on the sofa. And here also after. दूध पीने के बाद. So we are talking about time and here we are talking about position. I like to finish my homework Before I go out to play. Before means we are talking about time. Are you going to the market? Again, we are talking about position. May I come with you? This is also position. And position of which person? I. I want to buy flowers from the shop. Again, from is giving you the position. And why it is giving the position or how you will know? From the shop which is next to the toy shop. You can also say that next to is also a kind of preposition. But since we have these blanks, we will just fill in these. So that's it for this video. Thank you, students.